Hello class, we are going to be starting our table of contents here. The first set of notes we're taking for this unit is going to be called mitosis versus meiosis. Those words sound very similar. It's because they're a similar process, but they're slightly different. That is going to be on page 35. And then free choice output is going to go on page 36. Go ahead and pause the video if you need to finish writing that down. We're going to go ahead and head over to page 35 in your notebook. Should be numbered 35. We're going to title this mitosis versus meiosis so that it's consistent with what you wrote in your table of contents. And if you want to go ahead and write free choice at the top of this. Okay. So we are going to actually turn this into a bit of a Venn diagram. I think for space purposes, we're still going to do it down the page, but I'm going to set this up maybe differently than you're used to seeing, but we're going to do a circle at the top. And then I'm going to leave some space in the middle to write some things that they both do. If it's easier to just do 3 columns for yourself, then that's fine with me. So I'm going to put mitosis, and then I'm going to put meiosis, and anything I write in the middle applies to both of them. Okay, so these words are crazy, but there are 2 types of cell division: mitosis, meiosis. So actually both of these in the both column are a type of cell division. Cell division is just a fancy, not even fancy way. It's just a way to describe reproduction. All of our cells reproduce, and there's a couple purposes that we'll talk about. So the mitosis is a type of cell division, and it happens in our body, and the purpose is for reproduction. That's the main purpose. But that's just to reproduce our body cells. And sometimes those we call somatic cells, our body cells. So pretty much any cell in our body that's not, that's a eukaryote, that's part of actually our functioning, that is not a sex cell. Meiosis, on the other hand, reproduces our sex cells. Those are called gametes. So those are the sperm and egg, basically. Any other cell in our body, somatic, otherwise gamete. So both reproduce, but totally different purposes. Now, why would our body cells need to reproduce? Well, mostly it's if something you're injured. So your cells are going to start reproducing to repair your injury. Also, when you're growing, there's growth that happens. Even when you are an adult, your cells are going to be, repairing themselves. You're still going to have growth of like hair cells and other things like that. And those are the two main reasons why your body cells would start recreating themselves or splitting into repair and growth. Meiosis, the purpose of that is to, oh, and this one, sorry, to add. So repair and growth, it's going to create, or at least try, unless there's a mutation, an exact copy of the cell. So if you injure your, you have an injury in your skin, that's the type of cell that's going to reproduce. It's not going to suddenly become a lung cell. It's going to create an exact copy of the cell. Meiosis is going to, the sole purpose is reproduction of the species, not just the cell itself. And it's going to create a genetically diverse copy. So it does that for many reasons, but we'll talk about that later. It's important that they are genetically different. So that is meiosis. Now, they both go through this process over and over. So I'll just draw a quick diagram. If mitosis starts off as a cell, and let's say I just draw it with a nucleus, and you get the point. When it reproduces, it's going to split into two cells. And eventually those cells are going to grow, and they're going to go through various steps, and then they would eventually split again, and it would keep happening, especially when you're growing. It happens pretty fast. These are identical to the original. We call this these daughter cells when they make a copy. And these are going to have the exact same number of chromosomes. Now, chromosomes are organized forms of DNA. So you've heard of DNA before. We've talked about it several times. Inside our nucleus, there's these tightly coiled strands of DNA that look like an X, and those are called chromosomes. And so our body cells are actually going to make the same number, which in our body is 46. So every cell in our body that's a body cell, a somatic cell, has 46 chromosomes. And so the copies are going to have 46 chromosomes, and each of those pieces of DNA and code are going to be coded the exact same way. So the instructions are the same. Unlike meiosis, where you're going to end up, actually, let me draw my diagram first. So meiosis, when meiosis is happening in our bodies, it actually goes through two phases of cell division before you can say you actually have a complete cell. These cells are diverse. They take the same genetic code in the original and split it again. And what you actually end up with, there's also a doubling process that happens, but what you end up with is called a haploid, which is half the total amount of chromosomes that they need. Because in order to make a complete sex cell, the sperm has to find the egg, sexual reproduction. So your haploids or your gametes only have 23 chromosomes total, and that's those DNA collections. So there's 23 of these in each haploid. And a haploid, so a gamete, a sperm or an egg, if it only has 23, it's not technically, I guess, a complete cell until the sperm finds the egg. 23 and 23 is 46. So that's good math. So you'll notice once, let's say this is egg plus sperm. I'll zoom in. I just drew a little squiggly swimmer dude. And the egg, that equals 46 once they come together. Males have reproduced their sperm constantly. Your body is going through meiosis as we speak. It is constant and doesn't really stop. Women are born with the exact number of eggs they're ever going to have. And once a woman is at mature age, every month she's going to ovulate, and one or two, sometimes two, but most of the time it's just one egg a month she gets rid of. And so eggs in a woman's body are as old as the person. Whereas guys, every day, fresh batch, good stuff. I hope I didn't make you all blush too much. At least you didn't have to be sitting in class while I said all of that embarrassing stuff. Okay, that was a lot of information. As far as things that are the same, cell division, reproduction, also they go through a process which we call the cell cycle, and it contains 6 steps. I'm going to note them abbreviated. You don't need to know these. Interphase, prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase, cytokinesis. They both go through that. But of course, this one goes through it once, and then this one goes through it twice. Most of the body, the cell's life is spent in interphase, and then it splits during what we call PMAT. And then the cytokinesis is when the cytoplasm finally splits and separates, and you officially have separate cells. So actually, meiosis does IPMATC, PMATC, because it only goes through interphase once. That's where the bulk of its life. Once it starts splitting, it's like, it's gone. It's going to do its thing. This is something I've in the past, I've required my students to know exactly what happens during each phase. I'm not going to do that this time, but you do need to understand that this goes through it once, this goes through it twice, and they're both part of a cycle. I also have a way I remember it. I say I prefer milk and tasty cookies. That's how I remember the order: interphase, prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase, cytokinesis. Cool. We'll stop there. That was a lot of information. I hope it didn't totally overwhelm you. Just for reference, if you are curious, if you were to zoom in on this chromosome, it is just like the Bill Nye video we watched. It is that double helix ladder that you are used to seeing, deoxyribonucleic acid. So that pieces of that code for genes, which if you take a piece of that, it could represent a gene. Let's say that's the gene for eye color right there, this little piece. So you have many, many genes in your body, and they're passed down. Okay, over to free choice. This is free choice. Therefore, you can reference page 1 in your notebook. It's been a while. Has your options. So you can go back there. Remember, I'm looking that you're demonstrating understanding. So when I'm listening to your Flipgrid videos or I'm looking at pictures of your work, I'm looking to see that I see you get it. So if you do something and it doesn't show me you get it, then you need to do it again. You can write a summary, find a newspaper article, write an explanation, create a comic strip, 5 to 6 squares, write a cheer song or poem. Needs to be at least 10 lines though, with 3 vocabulary words or more. Create a sample test. It doesn't say this, but at least 4 questions. Create a mnemonic or a way to remember. Create 3 engaging headlines and explain what the headline has to do with the unit. Draw a detailed picture and then that summarizes your notes, include labels, and come up with an idea that's not on the menu and share it with me. Let me know. There's examples of each. So A, example, B, example, and so on and so forth on this other side if you'd like to see. You'll notice the detail that's in these. I know this is the easiest one, but that doesn't mean it's the one that's going to demonstrate understanding. I have my own mnemonic. I prefer milk and tasty cookies. Maybe you decide you want to come up with a mnemonic on your own. But again, that's not something you need to remember. I've already told you didn't need to know that. So I think you should pick something else. Pick something with a little more complexity and stick with that. I'm more concerned that you know the difference between these 2 things. Last but not least, I'm going to use a different color. One way I remember the words and how they're different is I see the word me and meiosis. You don't have to put this on your paper if you don't want to. Makes me. So this is the one that has to do with how we are passed, how genes are passed from parent to offspring. Whereas this one is just all your other body cells. It doesn't have to do with sexual reproduction. Okay, so that's how I remember that. Maybe that helps you, maybe it doesn't, don't know. All right, I'll stop there.